Okay, here we go. That's great. Now we're working. Everything's working. I'm so glad. It was very strange because I thought YouTube did something completely different, the Zoom connection. And it turns out I just pressed the wrong. It's fine. I pressed the wrong button. But let me know in the chat. I know you all are saying where you're coming from, and I love that, but that's not going to help me. So if you can hear me, give me an emoji of how you're feeling right now, or an emoji of a color that you're really into in the day, or just your favorite sound of an animal, your favorite animal sound. I'm so excited to have you guys. I haven't done a Friday night workshop in a very long time, so this is thrilling. We are at the edge of our seats, and I can't wait to jump in with you. I have a couple things I want to say at you real fast. Yeah, I love these emoji blow-ups. They're so good. Oh, I love it. Okay. Oh, hi guys. Oh, it's so great to see everybody. Now, what am I saying to you? I am saying thank you for being here, first of all. Second of all, before we get started, this is a special workshop because now this initially was going to be a workshop to work along with folks who were able to snag my box with Let's Make Art. And it's a course that has five different classes in one, essentially, and then some supplies as well. And part of Let's Make Art, my partnership with them, is that the community is able to nominate somebody else in the community. And this is the greatest part, okay? So the person who's nominated receives a postcard of the artwork that we all do together in this workshop. It's so fun. Now, I understand if you end up really loving your piece and you want to keep it to yourself, I totally get that. That's where you have to create another one, because here's what happens. The honoree is going to get an influx of so much art from the community. And I just think that is so cool. And so if you haven't grabbed the box yet, that's okay, because we are going to, the first thing you need to know, and I'll repeat this later, is, because I know that there's going to be a lot, but the first thing to know is if you don't have the Let's Make Art kit, you didn't receive the mailing address yet, not to worry. Hang tight till Monday. We're going to get it your way. Okay. You'll get an email with what you need to know. So now I want to introduce, she's not with me, but I'm going to show you a picture of who has been selected. So this is On, and let me move this over. So On is, she just her picture makes me so happy. But she is a mom of 3 kids, and she has selflessly dedicated her life to caring for her family and never asking for anything in return. You know, like most moms, it's just too sweet. But she has been recently experiencing some health issues, and she's trying to stay strong. And so we as a community are going to come together and show her that we care and that she's not alone and can ask other people for support. So it is a beautiful sentiment, and I want to thank you for being here, not knowing why you are here. No, we're going to have a lot of fun, and we are going to dive into watercolor together for purpose, but also for fun. How about purpose and fun can go together? Cool. All right. That being said, what do you need? So I saw when I popped in, some of you guys were asking, and it's really any watercolor that you want, because I know some of us are going to have different things. Yes, a larger brush. So, I mean, size 8, 10, 12, 16, whatever you want. These are for our loose petals. They're loose strokes. We also have, I know, isn't that fun? Oh, by the way, my responses to chat, you're going to see about a 45-second delay because live stream. And then you're gonna need a smaller brush size. So 2, 4, 6, something like that. Those are gonna work great. Don't overthink that part. Round brushes are what I'm using. I love round brushes because they have so much versatility. This isn't something, we're not going to go into a ton of technique. We're kind of just going to jump in. And if you want to know technique, that's what the course is for. I believe that Alina sweet Alina, she's not hanging out with us right now because she lives in Portugal and it's late for her, but she just makes all the moving parts happen. So I'm pretty sure the description under this video has that link if you are wanting it. Otherwise, we shall get started. I will put this in front of my face and we will dive in. The other things we need obviously are paint. I don't care if your leaves are purple. You choose the colors that you want. If you don't have a postcard size, this came in your box. If you don't have one, if you don't have the box, or if you already used that one, then you can cut it to size. And you can cut it to size terribly, like I did, where I decided to not measure, and then I have 4 different sizes. But guess what? Standalone size, no one's gonna know that this isn't the same size as this size. Fine. Okay, so another part is you can go horizontal, you can go vertical. That's the beautiful part. We're doing loose florals, so this is going to be open to interpretation. We're not all going to walk away with the same bouquet style. I'm also going to do my absolute best to get us through 2 of these because I'm obsessed with being able to paint with everyone. It's my favorite thing. Thank you, Diane. So yeah, postcard size paper, so that we can send them off. If you want to practice on a larger piece or you just want to paint along and then do this project later, that's fine. But I'll tell you what, there's nothing quite like a project. Let's see if I can do tech. Man, I swear every day I just feel, there we go. Okay, every day I feel older and older, just not knowing how to make anything happen. Okay, so again, like I mentioned, we're not doing a lot of technique because I want to get through these with you, but essentially I am going to show you just some loose, okay, so, 1 second. Okay, let me know. Oh, it's back. Weird. I wonder what happened. Is this sound okay, or does it sound too echoey? Because I switched mics. Let me know. I'll keep talking and then I'll switch if I need to. Yeah, 4x6 approximate. I have no idea. I have no idea. But just something that, you know, can be sent off. Let me get a ruler for those of us who like to. I don't even know what size your postcard paper is that came. Yeah, look, 6-ish, and not 4-ish. But all my papers are different size. But yeah, 4x6 is great, and you can totally grab that sound or size. Sound is fine. Cool. Thanks, guys. All right, so this way, this way, this way. You can get creative. Watercolor paper, brush, some water. Great. 3x5. Perfect. Okay. 3x5. But it's a, you know, you can just, oh, is this Elizabeth that I see? I hope it is. Thank you so much for plugging that detail in there. I didn't know I was going to have a friend. Y'all, if this is, even if it's not, the Let's Make Art team is just fantastic. They're beautiful people and they share this passion so much. You might know Let's Make Art from Sarah Cray. She helped found. You are getting one. All right. Well, I'm going to switch back to same microphone. What am I trying to click here? 2020. Not the year. Okay. Your postcard from a previous box was 4x6. Wonderful. How about a small piece of paper? Oh gosh. Okay. Can you guys hear me? I'm on the better mic now. It's still a little bit far away from my face, but here, as long as you can hear me and we're going, I'm going to start rolling. You can play. I'm going to stop looking at the chat. How about that? I'm kidding. I could never. All right. So what I want to do is I can't help myself. Like I'm going to naturally say what I'm doing, like commentary driving. So you will hear me talk about technique, but I just know if you're behind, it's just a refresh. Thank you. Wow. It's just kind of a refresher kind of, and you can go back and watch those fundamentals again at any time. But essentially, I'm just completely wetting my brush. I want to go on the side and roll it to really soak up a lot of water. And that's going to be essential to my brush actually holding enough paint. Okay. And so then I'm going to go into my paint kind of the same way where I just roll it on its side. My wells are pretty small. So I actually end up kind of jamming it in there and rolling it and calling it good. If you make mistakes like this, that's totally okay. There are ways to pick up water, but there's also ways to cover it up and make it look intentional, especially with what we're working on right now. So I'm just going to flip this around and go to town. So the first florals that we're going to do, actually, I think I do like it from the bottom. The first florals that we're going to do are going to kind of be a very loose, very lush stem. And so all we're going to do is we're going to do some C curves. And the C curves, basically what that's going to be is full pressure down and then up, 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 up. And it's okay if water gets stuck right there. It usually just means you have too much water in your brush. You can just go over that and push it where it needs to go. And by that time, the water, that excess is going to be off. I'm going to grab more paint and then do another C curve and just flick it off a little bit shorter. And then I can do that to the side here and then the side here and just create kind of a cradle. And it's very loose. There's not a lot of form to this. It seems like it's not finished, and I totally understand. And I feel you, and I feel the same way, but just wait. Because once we get moving, you're going to see how this comes together and it flows beautifully. So that's one way to do this. And your flowers don't have to look like mine. They don't have to be piecey like this. They can be more open. So let's do one like that. See what that looks like. I am dipping in here and I'm not rinsing. I'm just dipping and sliding off the side and then grabbing more paint. And I'll do a flower that's kind of opening up toward me a little bit more. So I can paint a petal like this. And so I basically set down my brush one way and then flicked off, but really short. Okay. Another way to do this would be to pull from the tip, from the center like this, but in one stroke and press down and then lift up. And that's just more like defined petals. So it's not quite as loose and messy. So I can do those types also. And you can also blend the two. And then it just looks more organic, right? I am going to make it looser though, because I am a fan of messy, messy flowers. Okay, so there we go. And I'm going to continue this upward. So I'll do another, just kind of, I'm doing my flowers first. So I'm putting them in place. And then just kind of creating with the tip of my brush, just some noise at the very edges. And that just makes it gives the illusion that there's layers, essentially. Okay, and then as I get toward the top, I'm going to have these flowers be a little bit smaller. But the same idea, just C curve, and then a little bit of movement for those nice. Oops, there we go. I guess I said smaller and then it wasn't smaller. If that happens to you, like it happens to me all the time, just put some buds around it. So just quick with the tip of your brush. And it's okay if they're pretty saturated. I think that actually adds to like that feeling of them being buds. Whereas when it's a lighter paint, like more water, less paint, it ends up looking a lot softer and almost like it's like more delicate. And this is more wrapped up. And you'll see I added some white space, just a little bit in between the bud. And that's just kind of giving the illusion of the definition. So like the crease or the petal that's like the flap, so those little lines, the reason I leave that white space is to give that kind of vibe. So this looks hot mess, I know, but just wait, because the magic of leaves is a delight. It is a delight. I might add more to this, I don't know yet, but I'm pretty happy with what this looks like. I'll add a bud right here just to have a little more balance. And maybe right here. And notice that this one is kind of peeking out toward the side. Okay, so this is going to flow, and yours is going to look different than mine, and that's okay, because the idea is very loose, and this is just to get us warmed up. Like, we're already halfway done with this, so we might even have time for, don't quote me on this, but we might even have time for 3. Okay, so when I rinse my brush, I want this pink completely off. So I'm basically going on the side and rolling. And that pressure. So I'm not like flirting with the water. I'm not going on the bottom because I don't like to shove my brush to where the tips get bent. I always go on the side and apply pressure. You can see that I'm bending it. So there's pressure and I roll. And that gets the paint out of inside my bristles. Okay, now you can grab any green. But like I said, if you don't have these colors, this is opera pink just for reference. But if you don't have a certain color, use a different color, anything you like. Before this dries, actually, real quick, if you have any other color, like yellow, I'm going to go with yellow. You can drop some yellow into what you just painted. And it's going to just create like a hue shift in certain areas. And it just breathes like some depth in. It's really, really fun to do. So that's just like a little added thing. I usually do this with leaves, not so much with flowers, but why not? We're wild tonight. It's a Friday night. What if it wasn't Friday and I was really confused and just kept saying that? You'd feel like, Peggy, my gosh, why am I here? Okay, but see what I mean? It's hard to see on camera what I'm seeing, but it just creates this really cool effect. Now, what I want to say is this is bothering me because it's looking like it's pushing, and that might be true, but I am not going to jump to fixing anything yet, because sometimes you just have to trust the bleed, because the bleed that happens with watercolor, if we try to manipulate that too much, like if we come in here and move stuff around, we might be like missing out on the really cool effect that we end up getting. And so we don't want to do that. I'm going to move this closer. Okay, so from here, I'm going to grab a green. I have no idea what green, because I have so many greens in here, man. Okay, any green will do. You guys have green in your kit. You have opera pink in your kit. You have that yellow in your kit. I know that. Okay, so I'm using, I like Daniel Smith and Winsor & Newton. Winsor & Newton's great. Daniel Smith is great. You know, I have this brush, but just for funsies, let's switch to the smaller brush so that we can get a really nice thin hairline stroke. And I know that I loaded this up with paint and I don't want to waste it. So I'm just going to set it to the side and I can use it later. I'm that person. Okay. So I'm going to grab a green. And now I have my thin brush, and this is going to, again, it's going to give us that nice thin hairline stroke. And you can make a thin stroke with a round brush that's larger. It's just a matter of not putting a ton of pressure on the brush itself. So just using the tip of it and dragging upward. And I try as hard as I can to always drag my stems into my flowers while they're still wet, because it creates that really pretty bleed effect. I'm just a big fan of it all the way around. But if you don't like that, either wait until it's dry before you connect it, or just leave a small gap in between your stem and your flower and it won't happen. The less, or the more dry that it is, the less it will bleed, but it might still have a little halo of a bleed. So if you like that style, what you can do is just wait until it's mostly dry and then come into it. And then you'll just have that small little halo and it's really pretty. So that's another option. And now I'm going to create a ton of stems, not a ton, but a ton in the sense of there are going to be a lot of leaves. So notice when I come off of this one, I'm not going to come off at this direct harsh angle. I'm going to have it flow with the growth direction. So that might mean coming off like this. It also might mean coming off like this and then flowing this way, but nothing is sharp, essentially. I keep saying essentially, that must be my word of the day. All right, so plugging that into the base, plug one in here. Not sure where the plug's coming from, but that's the vocabulary. Okay, So it's fine, right? It's really leggy. This is looking terrible, even more terrible than before. Perfect. We are on the right track. Now what I want to do is I want to get my brush. I just dip it in water and slide off the side. So I don't really rinse much. I just want a little bit more transparency in my leaves. Okay, so notice what I just did. I painted right next to this wet flower. I'm going to bring this closer. And what it ended up doing, you can see in the leaf, it has a little bit of pink that's bleeding into it. So that is by design. I love having that overlap. Obviously, you don't want to do it when both are super, super wet because then they just turn into mud. But if you can do where you just have, leaf and then just a little bit, and then drag it together. And sometimes you can just paint the whole thing and then just come up a little bit to touch it. And so now you can see that the leaf is bleeding into that pink a little, which I don't know how I feel about, but I think it'll be pretty. It'll be fun. Okay. So let me talk about leaves real fast on how to achieve these like long, flowy, elegant leaves. What you can do is I'm going to just drag one up and out here. So up and out. And then it's just like those C curves with the flowers. So it's full press down, C curve to the tip. So you can see what I'm doing is down, pressure, 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 and then light, 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 light. And I get really light about halfway through. So a lot of things that happen when people are trying to do leaves and it's like not working out the way that they'd want is they're not lifting up soon enough. This white space in here, but they're not doing it in a way that it's just leaving too much white. And so a way around that is to watch. So what I just did also is I dipped my brush because I wanted it to be a little bit lighter than this. So I'm playing with transparency. And when you play with transparency, it kind of makes it look a little bit lighter, it makes it look a little more layered. But what you can do to create that white space is when I press down on my brush, I'm watching the inside of the left because that's where that white space is. And I'm forming everything while watching that. And you might have a couple areas you might need to redo, but it becomes muscle memory. And then the less pressure that you have, so I'll bring some off right here. The less pressure you have, the thinner your leaf will be. And then that's also using more of the tip rather than the full body. Whereas if I want something nice and thick like this, I can press all the way down. So you can see like my brush is, I need a little more water. My brush is all the way flat. Like I'm really pressing that in. And I don't even need white space. Like that turned out to be a really pretty shape. I'm going to leave it. So there's a lot of just like letting watercolor work for us and allowing it to kind of, take form, like trusting the bleed. So you learn about your own hand is forming its own muscle memory, your own, your paint, no pigment is created equally. So, I might get the same brand of paint across the board thinking like, oh, this is going to be really effective for this and this and this, only come to realize that's not the case at all. And I'll have to figure that out and relearn like each pigment individually. And that's often the case. So if you're like, oh, well, mine always ends up runnier, and I need more water, I need more this. Well, that's probably going to sound, that's like a troubleshooting thing for everything. And that's why you hear people say like, oh, these are my favorite colors. And it's probably because like you get along with them the most, not to mention they're beautiful, but it's really a thing. Okay, so now we're going to come over here and I'm just filling basically. And what you can do from here is also come off of that main area and create additional stems. Sometimes I like to put the stems in place before the only reason I keep tilting the entire way is because this is wet. And for some reason, I always start on the right, even though I'm right-handed, and that ends up I drag my hand through my paint so much. I don't like to tilt, especially when I'm doing flowers, because I feel like it distorts. But if it's just leaves, you're usually pretty safe with composition, but just be mindful of it because that can get annoying. All right, I'm going to switch to my larger brush now. I'm just going to get it wet, drag it on the side. I know it had paint on it. I don't know how much paint. Now this is going to be huge if I go full pressure. So I'm not going to go full pressure, but I am going to, okay, I need a little more. I am going to see how this starts forming. And it's mostly, it's going to act as filler really well. One of the reasons I like these larger brushes is, especially now that this part is dry, I can come in and just create some filler leaves in the background that are kind of light. So I'm using a lot more water than paint, not a ton of water, just more paint or more water than paint. And that will give me this lighter color without having to get an actual lighter color. While I keep that tone, it just looks, like more in the distance. And so I'll just keep going in water and pulling off of the side without ever going back in for paint. And even though that looks so subtle, it's like, oh, I'm not even painting anything in, like this isn't really, no, it ends up all playing a part in this beautiful scene that you're creating, because it's all of these layers are necessary, to add that depth. So I'm just kind of picking and choosing some places. In some areas, I'll even just, pressure and then lift up, pressure and lift up, because they're not really legible. They're just like that background noise. And then I'll switch again. I'm going to come back to my small brush, and I'm actually going to switch green. And if you don't have another green, you can just grab some yellow and grab some yellow. Always grab your lightest color first, because it's just easier to not like transfer. Like my yellows are really dirty because I'm not mindful about this. So I end up doing that a lot. But then I'm going to grab not as much of the green because I want to be a little bit conservative so that I don't make it crazy. That this is giving me more control to see. So see how this is turning into kind of a, it's actually really pretty. I don't know what to call this, sap green kind of. So I'm going to use that the same way that I would paint out of my palette and I'll start small because it's easier to forgive small areas than large areas if we don't like something. But I actually really like this color. I don't know if you can, it's not really showing up on camera the way that I'm seeing it, but also make sure you're not painting over one of those transparent ones that you think is dry that isn't dry yet, like I just did. But now my whole goal is to fill in the spots that look really leggy, that look like they just have, too much stem happening, not enough leaves. But I want to do this with this other color because it's just adding even more depth. So you can already see how those 4 blobs that I initially had, they're coming together because they have all of this extra fun to be had. I know loose is tricky. Like there are so many times that I am just not stoked with my loose paintings, especially during, and I'm just thinking, oh gosh, no. And sometimes I even have to step away before I see it. And when I come back, like I'll be certain that I hate something, like so certain. And I return to my desk like either the next day or something. And it's like in my mind, it's going to be trash, but I had to let it dry before it goes in the trash. I don't know, whatever. And then I'll see it and I'm like, oh, it's actually, I really like this actually, because when we're in it, it just doesn't feel as good. Because it is a messy process. But what I've learned through doing this is that the messy part, I actually get a lot of satisfaction out of it, because rather than focus on the finished result, I'm really enjoying the texture. So I think about, the texture of the paint itself. I think about brush strokes, and I just think like, okay, this is a great practice for my colors or my strokes or whatever. And it's like I'm experimenting. And then if it turns out that I like the end result, that's just a bonus, because isn't creating all about the process, especially when we're creating for somebody else? Isn't that fun? Okay. So warm-up exercise concluded almost. There's one other part that I want to do to this, and it's probably, if you don't like what yours is looking like, it's probably going to be like that final like wow factor that you need. And it's really simple. Grab any color. It can be a bold color or a dark color. I would say darker, lean on the darker side. So I could even just grab the green I've been using. That's what I'll do. And don't test your watercolor like I'm doing. Don't touch it. What you could do is do this sheen test. So you might see that some of mine areas are still wet, but the part that I'm looking for are the insides of these flowers. And that's what I want to see. And sometimes you won't fully see it, but I want to make sure that it doesn't, it's not going to bleed. If it bleeds a little bit, no big deal. But if it's really wet, we don't want that. So I'm going to use the very, very tip of my small brush. And I'm going to come in, and by the tip, I mean, like, I'm going to start tapping before I even touch the paper, because I want it to be that small. You can obviously go bigger than this tiny mark, but when I hover and I just kind of like, okay, hover. Okay, great. Then I know how much pressure. Whereas if I just went in to be like, okay, I'm going to start dotting, it might be a little larger than I wanted. I like a bold center of a flower though, so I'm fine with it. But I just wanted to give you guys that, because I know a lot of people like a more delicate look. But I'm just creating like a oblong shape. So it's longer than it is tall. And it's just to pull the center of the flower, like the attention to the center, even if everything else kind of looks like a mess. And I'm going to leave this one and have it look like it's going straight up. Okay. So I want you to hang on to this first one, because we're going to add to it in a bit with ink. I don't know if that was in the supply list, but we're going to do that. So just hold on to it, let it dry. And then we're going to grab another piece of paper. So I'm going to give you guys a second. I'm going to take a little drink of my tea. And then we will move over to like more of a central focus. But while you guys are finishing final touches, which you obviously can do in a minute as well, I'm just going to show you some visuals. So the same idea of what we just created can be done like this. And this is way simpler. It's the same thing though. So what I did here was I clustered the flowers together more. So I started with just these 3 flowers. You can see that they are a little bit more structured. They are more defined, the petals, but they are simple. They're those simple C curves, just like real scratchy. And then the leaves, I just elongated. So we're going to do that next, where the leaves are a lot more flowy and dancey. And the other part that I love about this is buff titanium is just a favorite of mine. I love it. If you've ever taken a workshop from me, you know, it's this tannish color. It's like a beige. It's so good. And it looks so good with every single color. It even looks good as a flower. But I ended up doing the same thing that I showed you with the flowers, but with leaves. And so I dropped in some of this burgundy on top of a wet beige color, and it just turned out to be really pretty. The other one is this guy. And so this is a similar situation. The petals are more structured, but then I have these loose ones that just like the ones we just did, and they don't have a center. They're just to kind of create that illusion of the element of being there. I have some sprigs that are smaller than these. And so these are just different stylistic choices that you can put, plant in your pocket for later. These ones are, they're more of like that central focus. So like we have these really, really tight centers that are fun to play with. And you just do that with the tip of your brush. And then everything around it is less paint each time. And you just have a C curve. And the big thing to remember is to not connect every single edge, because you want that separation so that it does look like it has some layering. This is another one that has more white space in between strokes and just kind of builds up more. So that's just, and this is unfinished, but I still think it's pretty. This is another one that has kind of a blend of those. I actually did this was one of my earlier ones. I think I might have grabbed it by accident, but I'm fine with that. But yeah, this is another style ish that you will. So we're going to look at another one. We're going to go over this type of a flower in this way. So it's basically like clearer petals that are a lot more defined and simplified. Okay, so you should have your next paper ready. And let's I'm going to leave this out so you can see what what our goal is here. I know my paper looks square. I had an issue. I don't know how to cut paper. Okay. Which one? Gosh, it's hard to choose. I'm going to go with this one. Okay. That way everything can be seen. Now I want to tell you this. I'm not going to make what I'm about to do look like this. That's just like it's not my jam. I'm not great at it. So that being said, don't think that you have to like mirror what I'm doing, because loose florals are forgiving and they have a style without even like you don't even have to try, and they have a style. They just like your own, I mean. It just happens, and all you do is improve it with practice. So don't for a second think that this has to look exactly like mine. All right, so we have fun with color. I'm going to actually do the opposite and not have fun with color at all, because I really want to use, where is it on my palette? Oh, it's almost empty. I want to actually use a beige color for my petals. I want to go neutral. I feel like these neutral colors, when we balance something like that, like while color is so much fun for sure, I think it just looks really sophisticated when we have these nice, like limited color palettes. I'm going to turn this light. I don't know if that even helps, but hopefully it does. I think it got rid of his shadow a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to show you kind of the setup here. So you can see this flower is in the middle. So I'm just going to do some petals in the middle. I have a thick brush. So there's a couple things I would normally, I love to paint with a 4 and a 6. So a lot of times I would go full pressure down. So I'd set it down and then press that full pressure and then slide up. But because I'm using the larger brush, I'm going to do like a halfway press. So I'm still using the tip, but I'm halfway pressing to form that shape. You'll also notice that when I use a larger brush, I don't have as much of that scratchy appearance. So I'm talking this through because I want you guys to think about this in terms of when you're painting and the effects that you want to achieve, because it will help inform your decision on what you want to use. Okay, so I'm using the tip of my brush for the center, just pulling that out, and then doing like 2 very quick C curves. Like I'm not really forming them. And if they are too formed, I'm actually unforming them by scribbling them out a little bit. And that's because that's just what I'm going, that's just what I want out of this. So however this ends up looking, we're going to see together, but there's some movement there. That's fine. That looks fun. I like it. Okay. So now let's look at what this can be on its side. I'm going to grab a scratch paper, which you're welcome to do too, because I want to show you without a distraction. So if I want to do something like this, there's 2 ways to accomplish this very simply. When we think about a flower like this, it is facing upwards. So if you draw a circle around this, it's pretty circular. Like this is not a good circle. There. It's pretty circular. But if it was on its side, what happens to that circle? Here, put this down. if I put it on its side without moving my hands, there we go. If I was to make my hands like this 2D, I'm just looking at my pointer fingers and my thumbs. You can see that the length is still there, but the height has shortened quite a bit. And so that's what we're doing like mentally. And so instead of it being like this, it's going to be smushed. But that means the petals are as well. So the outside petals can still be just as long, right? But then everything else needs to be shortened. And then it also is, if you want to think about like an orange peel, or an orange rather, let's say you sliced it on all the sides and then you just peeled it down only. When you turn that on its side, think about how that petal, or excuse me, the orange peel is going toward you. It's coming outward, but it might not be hanging down. So how can I recreate that effect in a loose floral sense? Well, I can just do a little C curve like this, because it's giving the illusion that this right here is the top of that petal. This is the bottom, and it's coming toward me. So it's on its side. And then to really make that look like, you know, intentional, I can, the other side, have some separation in the middle, and then just have that petal in the background that's not coming up too high. So that's kind of like that in a nutshell. But this way, so there's two ways. I'm going to do this quicker now that I've explained that. So I like to start with a cradle. That's that petal closest to us. We don't want to make it too long because we want it to look like, you know, an actual petal and not like a big swoosh. And then from there, I'm going to do the background petals right away. So those are going to also be short. I'll just do a couple of them. I just kind of scribbled them in. So those are, and also notice they're at a slight angle. That's because if I set them directly upwards, it's just going to look kind of like they have bunny ears. It's not going to make sense. And then the next ones, they are going to reach out. They're going to reach outward like this. And while that might look really weird, that's going down too far. So just pretend it didn't. But for explanation purposes, this is the shape that we're going for. And then this is the center, and that's where you would add those little marks to make it look intentional. The other way to do this, instead of having one little cradle like that, is you can have two that are just at angles together, kind of like what we did with the ones in the back. But see how now it's like a trio that's coming and breathing life, and then it can get, you know, larger as it gets further out. And as long as it's reaching outward, it can be more of a layered flower. So those are the two ways that I would approach this. Let's keep this simple for now, but I still like, I just like to overshare. I like to give all the information. Okay. So for now, I know this is in two pieces, but I'm feeling like I want to do just one, and I want to make it close. So I'm going to come right above this one and just do that little initial cradle. And then I'll do that little bunny ear that we, not actually, and then another one. And then from here, I'm going to bring some, the petals on the side, just more length. So yeah, it's weird. It's a weird setup to think about, but what this does is it breaks things down into steps and makes that easier all around. Give me just a sec. Okay, cool. Chat moderating. Now we are going to do this one here, and I'm going to make it so that it is not quite as open. So let's see, dropping it. I think I'm going to drop it even further down though, just because I think that it would be fun to fill that a little bit, but I still want it on the right side. So I'm going to do the two right here, but see how I have them pretty close together. They're not super outward. And that's because I want this to look like it's more of that bud coming out. And I think I like how that looks. I don't think I want to add one to the right side. And I find that when I do these types of flowers, it really is in the flow of how I'm feeling or like what I'm painting in that moment. And then that's kind of what gives me my deciding factors. So that's just it's fun. It's intuitive, you know? Okay, so now I'll switch to my smaller brush. I'm gonna let that sit, let it dry, do its thing, and then come in with a stem color. So just getting creative. Let's see, what stem color do we feel like? I am feeling green. I'm gonna go with green, as boring as that is, but it's not gonna be boring because I have a nice neutral palette. It's gonna be very pretty. All right, so what I've done here is I've connected to the flowers, but I've also connected some leaves up and around, and I've done it in a way that everything is kind of, it's almost like a breeze, like it's almost pushing it back, but it's flowing over. So to do that, be careful if yours is wet because you don't want to drag your hand through it. But I start at the bottom, sort of in the middle, and I just start to pull this upward. And if you can't do that whole thing, I mean, I can't, then that's okay. Lift up and continue, just come into it rather than starting again right here, come into the flow and then bring that up like this. And that's actually a little thick for me, but that's okay. I'll do another one coming off of there. And so this is where my leaves begin to birth. And I'll do that again, and just kind of get the main parts solid. So I think that one will go through here, and then see I'm going with the same growth pattern. So it's coming up and off, and then up and off. I'm going to connect that a little more for that bleed that I love. Sometimes I'll even dab it into it if I know it's wet. I'm like, no, you will have the effect. Okay, I'll switch to my larger brush. By the way, all these switches, totally unnecessary. I could achieve everything I'm doing with the same size brush. It's just fun to be able to use them both so you can really get a feel and get familiar with like effects and what you like about one and what you don't like about another. And it's actually how I settled in loving 4 and 6. So yes. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing in S curve. So rather than a C curve, it's like a C curve. So it goes in, but then it comes out again. Okay. And then I'm going to do that same thing about that we talked about with leaves and come out this way. Now, this is a lot fatter, and it's because I'm using such a big brush, but I'm also, it's pretty, right? So let's say you don't want it to be as fat or wide. You can come in and just start low. Don't press all the way down and start lifting up a lot sooner. And again, don't press all the way down, lift off a lot sooner. And then you have that nice, you know, elongated, elegant leaf. All right, now I'll do one more of those, and then I want to switch up the tone. So we'll come up and off here. This is actually lighter because I have less paint on my brush, which I think is pretty. And so I'm sticking to it. All right. And then I'll do one kind of an accent. Maybe I'll go a little more blue. Might be fun. Gosh, there's so many options all the time. I think I'm going to go with like a brown, actually. Like a brownish, purplish, reddish, whatever color I'm dipping into. A lot of times that's what ends up happening because my palettes always look like this. And then I just like go in and I'm like, whatever this is, it's going to be real pretty. You know, that's the wonderful thing about it. Okay, so I'll have one right here, and that's a little too brown. So what I can do is come into and do that wet on wet that we did. Come into my green and just drop it at the tip here and then maybe at the base, and then allow it to bleed. And if it needs any assistance, I can do that in a minute. But for now, I'm just going to see what happens. Because you can see, like, if I was to hyperlapse this real-time moment, you can see it already bleeding. It's just like for our minds, we look at it and we're like, oh, it's only stuck in one spot. Just give it a sec. It might be true, it might not be true also. Okay, I'm gonna add green to my big mush pile so that I have a little bit of a different hue. Yeah, it does look like it's getting pretty dry, so I can come back to that. But overall, that I learned the hard way very early on that I need to be a little more patient. Patience is good. Okay, so that's a little too green. So now I want to drop some brown into it. And that's okay too. And I'm just doing that toward the side. This one's bleeding a lot better already, I can tell. It's hard to see on camera, but before this dries completely, what I'm going to do is I'm coming into my water and just going on the side, and then I'm going to drag it off most of the way, but not squeeze it out. And then I'm going to wet the inside and then touch it to the bleed. So I'm not dragging the bleed down. I wet the inside and then I just touch it, and see that encourages the bleed to come through. And that way it's still giving it the opportunity to make that effect without you dragging it around and making it look like a pile of mud, right? Okay. So you can see already, this is absolutely not at all the same, like in the slightest, and that's totally okay. So what I see in here that I want to adjust is I want more, I feel like this is still really leggy. And so I'm going to put some smaller, skinnier leaves with a smaller brush just on the inside here. And it's just going to act like that added texture I need. So see, even just that made a difference. So I'm going to do one more of those right here, just skinnier, just to give it a little bit of depth. Okay, so I like that better. I'm going to add the small spots to the middle here, but what I want to do also is drag in, I'm going to give this a little encouraging pet, just a smidge, just to break that up. Okay. Is pull in and don't set your hand on your stuff. That's not what we're supposed to do. I'm telling you, I'm the messiest painter there is. Like, don't feel bad if you make a mess and you end up in a situation, because I don't think anyone can beat how messy I am. This is very clean for me. Okay. So I'm going to come up just out of the top with really, really thin stems in a few places. And that's where I'm going to add those little buds again. And I just love texture. I love little spray, little things like that. It just is, it's so effortless. You know, like I'm just making these little balls, like what even is this? But you can see, like, even when it's nothing, it just adds to it. If it feels too structured or too symmetrical or something like that, just look at it and imagine, okay, if I was to put one here, how would that balance? That would actually balance quite a bit. So I think I'll just throw one in right here. And then I don't want one here because I like the negative space, but because these are the same length, it might help to bring one down a little or something maybe, but then that's going to be in line here. So maybe that's just I'm going to leave it. Maybe it's a leaf peekaboo. So this is just like out loud thinking of how I would approach getting to this spot, getting to that point. So I'll just do like two little leaf friends, and then it just balances. So that, in a nutshell, I mean, two very different styles, right? Oh, real quick, we got to add our centers. Gotta add our centers. I'm just going to grab that green again. And then if I'm not fully dry, I think I am, but that would be okay if I wasn't. And I'm just going to add that noise, a little texture in the center. And then if it's not quite what I want, I like to start small and then I can get larger if I want to. And then also coming back in and adding more of the dark part to the very center, especially when it is upright. Look what I just did. My goodness. Okay, if this happens to you and you love what's going on, you don't care that it's, or, you care that it's messy. I'm rinsing my brush really well, and I'm just putting some water over what I just did. You can grab paper towel and then just lightly, you're not pressing too hard, just dab into that spot. And if it's that wet, like, it usually lifts right off. If it's something that's dried and you don't notice it until later, so like, let's look at this one, for example. That one, even though like I did put that mess there on purpose, let's just see. Sometimes it does well. Pink and red is a little difficult to get up, but okay, already. So this was completely dry and I'm just running water over it. And then I'll do the same thing. And then that picked it up. You don't want to scrub it because it's going to make your paper pill up, but you can see like that's how you can erase watercolor. Okay. One last one here. But yeah, two very different styles, but similar technique. And so it makes it super, super, super fun. Now, I know I really am the messiest painter, but isn't that fun? It's so pretty. I know that I said maybe we'll have time for 3 and we don't, but it's okay because at least I was able to give you some other examples. Now, something to keep in mind, one is remember that you are going to receive a mailing address or how to get the mailing address on Monday. So don't be looking everywhere wondering where it is in your inbox because it's coming. And then the other part is if you haven't grabbed this box yet, I would love it. I have 5 courses, like full courses that give you so many different techniques to do. That's in the description with Let's Make Art. We did a partnership earlier a few months ago, and it's been so much fun to see what you guys are creating. So that's down there too. And it comes with a bunch of supplies, including my paintbrushes. Yes, my paintbrushes, which are amazing. And I'm biased, but I created what I couldn't find, and that was great. So anyway, the point of everything, I'm going to switch over to me because I like to talk. I'm a personal person. I like to have, you know what I mean? Okay, let's see. I just need to be able to do this faster though. Instead of clicking around like, what button do I press now, Martha? I'm sorry. It's fine. We had some emails today where I was called Martha and then I was called Janice in another one, and we can't stop laughing about it. So that's what that was. Just ignore me. What I want to say more than anything is thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of the community in any capacity ever, because I just think that we're kind of cool, right? Like we're just kind of cool. Like we get each other. We like art. We like creating together. It's palpable. It's delightful. Yeah. The mailing address, correct. It might already be in your email if you already have the box. So check that out too. But thank you guys so much. I hope you have the most incredible weekend. Please be sure to tag your projects at the Pigeon letters and at Let's Go Make Art, because we all want to see it so bad. Let's do this every day. You know? Okay. I will. Oh, shoot. Kate, yes, I'm going over time. I'm just putting it out there. I'm going over time because I want to add ink with you guys. I'm so rebellious. Ugh. Okay, I'm being rebellious. I have an extra 5 minutes. It's only going to take, if that, and we're doing it. Okay. Call me out because I will so be here for it. I got popcorn for it and everything. Okay, here we go. We're doing it. Ink, you want to make sure, yeah, at the Pigeon letters, you want to make sure, or just look up Peggy Dean, you'll find me. You want to make sure that your piece is dry, because it doesn't matter what kind of pen you use. If it's not dry, your pen's not going to get along with your paper. Okay. Here we go. Cool. Let's hope that my sound didn't go away this time. Do it. Okay. So here's what I like to do. I think about, I like to go outside the lines a lot. Okay, we're pretty dry. So I will just wave things out. And to show you real quick, when I do a petal, like let's say this is the petal. Let's say I want to make some texture at the top. So instead of going like texture, I'll end up coming in and dipping. Obviously not like perfectly spaced like that, but the reason why is because your petal doesn't come up, like it has the texture comes into itself, right? So that would make more sense as a petal on its side, right? The other part of this is when you have any line work, and you don't need them, but if you did have line work, you could, so this one is kind of like a petal that's on its side coming up toward us. So I always follow the direction of the petal when I do line work, and I do this really lightly. and I come up at different lengths and then I'll separate it. So it's not all going to be same direction of the petal, meaning like toward the edges, but it's not all going to be in one saturated spot, you know? And I'm really, really light with it. You can go deep, you know, darker, deeper, harder if you want to, but that's essentially how I'll do my line work. This is just going to be quick though. So I'm going to create a petal that's kind of large right here. This flower can call for any type of petal that you want. Oh, what pen size? I'm using an 05. Now that's a good question actually, because let's see. And this one actually is pretty old and dry, so we're gonna top it. So this actually is a great question. Okay, maybe I'll go 7 minutes over. Because your tip size is going to make a huge difference on the style that you want. So you can see the 01 is super thin, which makes it kind of look delicate. In my mind, it also makes it look unfinished unless you have a lot of detail to it. Now the 05, I feel like is a really good standard way to go for this type of size. The 09 is really bold and might make something look a little too doodly, okay? It just depends, it depends. But I think 05 is really safe. It's a safe go. I also love a PN. So the Pigeon letters doesn't have that, but Micron does. And that just means a plastic nib. And what I like about these is you can get, yeah, that's why I'm not using it. It's very dry right now. I don't know why this happens all the time. But you can get, there we go, a nice thick line. This is also going to be tossed. It's fine. Story of my life. But yeah, usually the PN, if it's not super dry and old, will sustain. And you guys in your pack have burgundy PNs, and oh my gosh, it is a delight. So these are the Pigeon letters monolines. They're just my go-to snag because here they are. So, okay, I'm going to start off just to the left of this one, and I'm just coming up and doing these, just a little texture. See how fast I went though? Like that was not, there wasn't a lot to it. I didn't think about it. I just knew that instead of coming up, I was just going down to make that noise. Now I can come around and connect it, or I can leave it. I don't know what I want to do yet. I lift it up and I'm like, oh, I kind of like this. So I'm going to just keep going. And if I want to connect it later, totally can. I'm going to come up and do the same thing here. And then I just kind of floof, technical term, floof off here. And that's just creating a layer, right? And then I can create a something in the background, or I don't have to. Just for fun, I will. So I'm going to come up and down. There we go. So it doesn't have to make complete sense. That's what I love about ink and florals, especially when it's like, you know, a loose style, because anything kind of goes, you know, like what is this weird line I've just created? What is this one? What I'm really paying attention to is making sure that I'm going with the flow of what a petal would look like if I was drawing it. So this one, you know, I'd have that curve. It would come up like, you know, like this, and then it would curve downward. Do I need to attach the whole thing? Nah. But this really, I think, brings things to life so much like that. And I let go. I'm not going to bring that down because I think that's really pretty. Yours is going to look way different from mine because our flowers look different. So I don't want you thinking like, oh, I have to do this here, this here, this here. You definitely don't. And then sometimes what I'll do, oh, I wonder if I have that on my person. While you guys are doing that, I'm just going to look real fast because I have a really good example of this, of a piece that I made that oh, you know what? I think it's not a loose. Oh, here's one. Okay, here's an example. See, I found that fast. Of having some stuff be like, okay, I have one petal in ink, I have 3 in watercolor and 1 in both, right? And it just like when you put it all together and have this line work with paint, it becomes so fun. And like some leaves are fully formed, some only have a line through the middle, some don't have any. And just getting creative and allowing yourself to explore like that kind of, it's just fun. So what I end up doing with a lot of this, if I don't want to be super defined, is I hike up on my pen and I just kind of let things flow instead of being so, because I'm a really deliberate drawer and writer. So when I write, my hand like has this death grip, and I'm an overwriter as a right hand, which is very strange. That's usually a left-hander thing. But when I'm drawing, I hike up like at least 2 finger lengths and I just let it flow. And it's just really, it really makes a difference. So I told you very fast, and it is. So that being said, very fun. Oh my gosh, I can't believe, okay. Amazing. I'm going to switch here real quick. Where am I? Okay, we did it. And I was 7 minutes, like I said, okay, 8 now. But that being said, thank you so much for hanging out. And I can't wait to see you guys so soon. Have the best creative weekend ever. Rest, self-care, do the things that make you light up inside. Okay, I'll see you guys soon. Bye, everyone.